Hi everyone, welcome to Tuesday Talks with Ann. We'll give it a minute for people to join in and for our guests to come on. Hi Deidre. Oh, there we go. Let's see. I need to. Okay, I'm getting it. I'm just inviting some of our people that are coming on. Mary, there we go.
Hey, Ann.
Hi. All right, let's get Taryn in. There we go. Just invited Taryn. So all of you should be invited here. There we go. I think we're just waiting on Heather. That's invited, so she should be gritting on in just a second. Good to see you all. This is fabulous.
Yeah, it's fun.
Nice to see you.
This is the first time I've ever done an Instagram Live with NAMI-NYS, so this is kind of an exciting first for us.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh, it says Queen of Corona is unable to join. Let me try one more time, and we will see if we can get Heather in here. Go live with Queen of Corona. Her last name is Perone. There we go.
Hey!
You made it. It said
I did. I thought I could be super tricky and do it with my computer also, but I don't know. I don't have that technological capability.
Neither does Instagram.
Oh, yay! Okay,
No.
good. It's not a Heather problem. Woo!
not you. It's not you at all.
Good.
It's Instagram. So welcome to Tuesday Talks with Ann. I'm Ann Canastra. And what a great night to come together to talk about women's mental health. And I want to say I really appreciate the three of you for joining on this inaugural evening of discussion for May is Mental Health Month to really highlight women. And I want to take a minute and introduce you all. Mary Bartlett, Heather Crone, and Taryn Hughes, if you just want to kind of do an introduction of who you are.
Sure, I'll get started. I'm Mary Bartlett. I am the president of the board of directors for NAMI-NYS State. I live in the capital region, but I am also a person that lives with mental illness. So really glad to be a part of this Tuesday Talk with Ann and to be speaking with all three of you tonight.
I'll go. I'm Heather Carone. I am a mental health nurse. I currently am at the VA, although I have been in mental health nursing for over 30 years and have worked in all different kinds of settings. I teach adjunct at the College of Nursing, St. Joe's College of Nursing. And I am also very excited about the opportunity to have this conversation.
Hi, I'm Taryn Hughes. I'm the founder of Forrest Hughes and Associates. I'm a compassion fatigue therapist, and my company provides the psychological oxygen mask that frontline workers need to protect their mental health on the job from the trauma exposure. And I'm very much on a mission to help everybody understand that professionals are not immune to being impacted by trauma on the job. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm also really excited to talk to the audience and to hear what their questions are later on in the broadcast.
Great. And I'm Ann Canastra, and I'm a therapist, and I'm a recovery coordinator at the Syracuse VA Medical Center, adjunct faculty for San Diego, and the treasurer of the board of directors of NAMI-NYS State. So I am very involved with our families and our board, and NAMI as an organization. I really adore it. So this came about because we were talking about May is Mental Health Month. And I want to tell you about Shop Repurpose. Shop Repurpose is a nonprofit that sells donated luxury goods to fund grants and provides job training and mentorship to individuals in need. NAMI is proud to partner with Shop Repurpose as one of their 2022 grantees. And in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is right now, May, 100% of the net proceeds of all sales for the month of May will be donated to NAMI. You can visit shoprepurpose.org or find them on social at Shop Repurpose. So they kind of said to us, like, hey, let's talk about women. And Mary and I were like, yeah, let's talk about women. And I put together this spread and some ideas. I pulled it from the therapy that I do every day, what women are talking about in therapy. And the closer that we've gotten to these days, I realized I could have planned an entire year of topics that women are coming to therapy with. And I think that you all are experts in your own right. So I'm thrilled to discuss and start this discussion tonight. I think it's important to say that 12 million women in the U.S. experience depression each year. 1 in every 8 women may develop clinical depression in their lifetime. Women are more likely to attempt suicide, while men are more likely to complete suicide. And, you know, we actually have disorders that men can't have. If you look at unique disorders such as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is a mood disorder that occurs before the menstrual cycle each month, perinatal depression, this is during pregnancy and after, perimenopause, that's related depression too. It's a mood disorder linked to the transition that women go through prior to menopause. I mean, we have unique things going on with us. And there is so much stigma out there as far as talking about some of these ideas. And so I really want to open it up. Mary, I'd like to invite you to kind of start us off, if you'll share a little bit about where you're coming from and your thoughts.
Sure. So thanks again for having this conversation. It's not one that I think a lot of people want to have. I know it's certainly a little intimidating to get on Instagram and just share the personal details that you know, are somewhat still stigmatized. So my story sort of begins when I was a teenager, started suffering from depression and anxiety, not really sure what that was or you know, how to put a label on what I was feeling. It continued through college with some, you know, really great periods and some periods of time that were just very low. And it wasn't until I was about 24 that somebody suggested bipolar disorder. And I said, you know, I don't know a lot about that. And when they described it to me, it was like somebody had given me backwards vision, that I could see everything that I had been through in the last sort of 10 years through a completely different lens. The therapy that I went through really, really helped. And so did medication. But it's a struggle to find the right medication, especially in the beginning, that can help someone. And taking medicine for mental illness is still really stigmatized too. It's not something a lot of people want to admit. Through therapy and through talking with a psychiatric nurse practitioner, I was also diagnosed with ADHD, which put a lot of my childhood and teenage years into perspective too, why I couldn't, focus on some things. ADHD, especially in women, is very hard to diagnose because it can often present as anxiety. And it's not sort of what people consider the typical, inattentive, or inability to focus. So through, my 20s, I'm 34 now, through my 20s, it was really a journey of learning about myself and owning what I was experiencing, finding ways to talk about it, looking for support systems like NAMI, like the NAMI community. And, as I got into my 30s and I had my children, I have 2 daughters. After each of them were born, I went through a really dark period of postpartum depression. That was something that, because I had really good dialogue with my medical professionals, my psychiatric nurse practitioner, my therapist, that we were prepared for, right? Because we had those conversations and people helped educate me, and I read things online and talked to others. And I got through it, right? I think that that's an important part of anything that you go through mental illness wise is that you can get through it. So if there's things that I'd like to, like the viewers to sort of take away from this, it's that it's not as scary to talk about it as you think. That talking about it only makes it easier for you and for other people to open up. And that having the right support around you is so important. From a medical team to friends to community like NAMI, it's so important to just surround yourself with things and people that are really good for your mental health.
Mary, thank you so much for getting out there and being vulnerable and sharing your story. It's very brave to do that, and I'm really grateful for you. You know, and some of those things hit home too. I remember after my twins, I wasn't feeling good a few months after. One of my babies was kind of sick. The other one was normal or whatever. And I said, man, my hair's falling out. It's got to be my thyroid. And I went and I had my blood work done, and my OBGYN said, Ann, maybe this is some postpartum depression. And I said, I'm a therapist. No way. And she was like,
yeah.
And she kind of looked at me and I was like, what? And I just couldn't hear that. I just, whatever that block was in me at that time, I couldn't hear it. And years later, I reflect on that and I'm like, yeah, hello. And I talked to my mom and she said, yeah, with your brother, I had postpartum depression pretty bad. And we know it runs in families. We know if our mothers have it, we're more likely to have it. Yep. And so this is hard. This stuff is hard. And so again, thank you. I think your story resonates with a lot of us as far as navigating the system and ourselves and getting through some of those stigmas out there. So I would like to send it over to Heather now. Heather, I would love for you to share a little bit about your expertise and what you do and speaking to stigma and all those great things.
Well, that's so kind. And I was just thinking, as you say, my expertise, and I feel like my expertise really is just being fortunate enough to be along several different journeys, right? As an educator, I think about myself as being fortunate to be on the journeys with my students. And we talk in every lecture about the role of stigma. And this year in class, I have more male nursing students than ever. And I appreciate that we're talking about women now, but I just think that that is such an interesting dynamic for men to come into what has historically been a female-dominated profession. And so I'm kind of mindful of my place in their journey in that way. And certainly, I am so excited, Taryn, when you talk about being the oxygen mask for professionals. Oh my gosh, I was so moved by that because yes. And this year with COVID and all of it, and certainly what's happening in terms of laws that are being made about women's bodies right now, there's so much that just feels like, what is happening? And so, yes to the oxygen mask is what I have to say about that. And in reflecting on what I had to say today, I have always felt pretty empowered as a woman. I have 2 daughters and I've tried to send them out into the world to be empowered women. And then just thinking about the profession that I'm in and how nurses have over time been seen as subservient to physicians, and now we're part of the medical team and heroes during COVID and all of it, and now some backlash around lots of nurses are leaving the traditional kind of medical situation and they're working as travelers, and we're being kind of vilified because we're going after money. And it's an interesting profession to be in. So I am going to be super curious to hear what Taryn has to say. I know I'm going to take away something. But I'm profoundly grateful. Thank you, Mary, because I consider myself so lucky to be on the journey with people that are processing and discovering in the way that you have had to do that. So I'm just grateful.
Thank you. Just jump in there. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I can't thank enough the team that helped me, the team that helps me every day navigate my mental health journey. And so I have never really put myself in their shoes to say, what about their mental health? So I'm also excited to hear the next comments too.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an old mentor that used to say to me that every day we're all just deciding which side of the desk we're going to sit on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some good wisdom there. Heather, can you speak to how you educate nurses on the stigma of mental illness? I know you as an expert in this more than almost anybody else, and you really do fight stigma every day. Well, you wear it on your sleeve, and you're not afraid to have those tough conversations when it's happening. And
Yep.
speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every lecture we talk about, I'm a mental health nurse, right? Words are my tools. And so every lecture we talk about what stigma looks like, how it sounds, how we embody that, how we have every moment the opportunity to choose to do something different in the way that we say things and what we say. We have developed several different discussion boards that we invite our students to come in and read something or talk about something. We do something, one of my favorite is we talk about the Willard suitcase exhibit and those folks that experienced some really stigmatizing treatment. Talk about the timeline of mental health treatment going all the way back to insulin shock and on and on and on, some really barbaric stuff, but helping students to appreciate that that's not so far behind us. And that it is then becomes part of that generational stigma and how the role that media plays. We really have some awesome discussions, and I love to see at the end of the year how students will correct themselves when they start to say something, because I sort of deputize all of them to go forward into the world. And so when they start to say something that I kind of look at them like, and they'll go, no, what I mean is, and so, yeah. And I think that that's a journey and an everyday trying to get better for all of us. So, yeah, but it is real. And again, like the words that we choose. So I'm working on that all the time myself too, Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. Every day.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So maybe transitioning to Taryn now. Taryn, do you want to tell us more about this oxygen mask and how you help with some of this and with women in particular, but with everybody? It's not just women, I guess, when it comes to our field and the helpers out there.
Sure. I'd be happy to. I just want to say thank you both for sharing first. It's really lovely for both of you to set the tone and to just offer what you've said already is just so meaningful. And I want to circle back a little bit to what Mary said. And I think there's so many women that are misdiagnosed. There's so many women that have lived through trauma that are misdiagnosed. And so I'm thinking about who might be sitting in the audience today. And if they don't feel as if the label fits them, maybe they should keep searching, because I've seen so many women that have lived through sexual assault or childhood abuse, and they are diagnosed with borderline when really they have CPTSD. So I just want to put a pin in that, since our community is focused on women's mental health today. And then the second point is, I think it's really interesting because I do work with a lot of female-led professions. So obviously social workers, nurses, teachers, a lot of these people are exposed to trauma, especially in urban settings, on a really regular basis. And there's almost this disposability of the professional. And there's the disposability of many professionals, so I don't want to limit it just to female-led professions, but I do look at the loss that everybody's experiencing, because I'm looking at the person who went to grad school, who put in their hours, who got licensed, who are experienced, and they have a wealth of knowledge, and they're usually mid-career, I would say something around 10 years. And they're starting to what they would classify as burnout, but they're not looking at, here's vicarious trauma, here's secondary traumatic stress, here's the effect and the impact of seeing human suffering day after day after day, and working within a system where there's a lot of moral injury. So women are often in those positions. And then I think when you intersect that with some of the stigma around women's mental health and having to be strong and having to keep going, and then the childcare and the caring for parents and being a caregiver at home, it just, it compounds it. So there's so many places we can go with this conversation, but I think it's really important to just look at the intersectionality. And and for the women in the audience, I guess the one thing I did have on my docket to make sure to tell everybody tonight is, if you're in the midst of dealing with symptoms, especially with PTSD symptoms or symptoms with other implications, just it sounds a little bit cliche to keep going, but I remember personally when I was really impacted by PTSD and by vicarious trauma myself, mid-career as well. And there was this part of me that just wanted to curl up in a little ball and kind of retreat. Like, can I just stay in my bed? Can I just curl up? Can I just block the world out? And I remember as I was going into healing with my therapist, and I was going, of course, into some of the details of the specifics, which the specifics are not as important as the journey, where I think, while we're in Mental Health Awareness Month, just as we're sharing, there's ways to share the important parts of our journey and to feel that we're connected and that have a shared experience without overburdening people with details as we do this. And it's, sifting through the details. And I remember grabbing some books and some research because of my profession and looking at the outcomes of people who had lived through what I had lived through. And I remember the outcomes were really dire. And my therapist had said to me, stop reading that. Do not look at that. You are not a statistic. This doesn't have to be your story. And I think, as we go through Mental Health Awareness Month and we're seeing statistics and we're seeing stories scroll through our feed and we're seeing how much suffering there is, just remember that doesn't have to be your story. It's okay if it is. And it's okay, especially if it is now, but what is your story going to be in 10 or 15 or 20 years? And so I was really intentional about trying to find people who had lived through what I had lived through, but then come out the other side living a successful, full, happy life. And I continued to orient towards them to say, that's possible. She lived through it, so I can too. And that changed. I really believe that in conjunction with being surrounded by a ton of qualified professionals and even being in the therapy circles, having good friends who are licensed social workers and therapists, all of that contributed. But this narrative of forgetting that there's a story after trauma, that there's a story of healing, and that story actually can be very meaningful and bring some benefits to your life. And I'm not by any means saying that there's good things from living through trauma and it all happens for a reason. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is you don't have to live in the statistical box that's being published. And oftentimes that research was done using very, one limited type of therapy, sometimes 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when we didn't have all the knowledge that we have now. So I just want to offer that to the audience, if you are listening, that keep going, and it's possible. It's possible to overcome it.
Yeah, I think that message is beautiful. That idea of hope, right? I think that is one of my foundational pieces as a therapist. I've had clients tell me, I don't have any hope, like I'm crushed, right? And I will say, let me carry that hope for you because I have it. Let me carry that little bit for you, and let's hope we can plant that seed to rebuild yours, right? And that's the beautiful thing about it. And my therapist too, when I have had hard times, like, they carry hope for me. The world ends and it begins again. So that's the great thing about it. So I don't know if anybody who is on with us right now has any questions or comments or thoughts on what we've had.
We're getting lots of hearts.
Yeah.
If you're seeing
the love, and it's wonderful. It's good to see the love. I didn't, like I said, I didn't see any really comments though otherwise. But I have some thoughts on this. Normalizing the struggle, I think, and the story of healing is what you for me, it's normalizing the struggle. We all are going through something at some point, right? And it's so easy to forget, right? When we are going through things that somebody else is too, because what's in front of me is my reality. And so everybody's going through my reality, right? But that's just not it. And so that just normalizing that struggle, that we're all having a rough day, it can be okay. And I think that can plant those seeds, like, okay, I gotta have hope for them on their rough days, and hopefully they have it for me, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And if I can just jump off something that you said, that feeling like the statistics, right? You were reading the outcomes of what was, people that were similar to you. I think that comes, coming sort of full circle with stigma, right? People hear a statistic and they say, okay, well, people with borderline personality disorder typically act this way. And you think that people will assume things about you. Or people with bipolar are, maybe suffer mood swings. Well, they don't really understand what bipolar means. And I think it's those statistics and those things that people like me, or at least me, get sort of bogged down with and think, oh, well, this is who I am, right? I fit in this box. I fit these statistics. And that's all you sort of are, is statistic, but it's not, right?
No. And did you see the comment in the chat?
I did.
Great.
Building resilience.
Yes.
I certainly have thoughts on it, but do any of you have some thoughts on building resilience? That's actually on my notes for today to talk a little bit about. I think building resilience, and I guess I'm cheating because I actually have notes about that in front of me. But the first thing, learning, and I think you all talked about this, in learning, what is the disorder, what's underneath it, what's behind it, the difference between having complex post-traumatic stress disorder or being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And they're really clinically close together, and it's easy to get one and not the other if we're not careful, right? So really learning and understanding. As professionals, never stop learning, right? And as people, never stop learning about ourselves and what's happening. Asking those questions, right? Like, why is this my disorder? What is it about this? And could there be more to it? And I mean, all of you spoke about the learning piece and being imperative. Sharing our stories, that builds resilience. If we can learn to share pieces of ourselves, and it's interesting, as a trained social worker and a trained mental health counselor, we're taught not to share ourselves, right? That part is buttoned up tight. We don't share about ourselves. It's always about them. But there can be some really healthy and progressive things done with appropriate sharing and sharing pieces. That connection, that human connection. Research says if you have a good relationship with your therapist, it is just important as the evidence-based practice that you're in front of them for. That relationship builds so much. Reframe the way we're thinking. So when we talk about hope, surround yourself with people who give you that, right? Changing our vocabulary, so that stigma and that power in our words. Heather, you spoke to that too. We need to stop saying things like I feel crazy, because crazy is full of stigma. That word is just so stigmatized because it implies so many negative things, right? But actually figuring out how to name what's under that. So what does that mean when I'm feeling crazy? I'm feeling out of control. I'm feeling a mess. I'm feeling all over the place. Like I'm feeling so many things right now. Crazy implies the negative though. So changing that vocabulary, right? And I mean, again, I go back to normalizing that struggle. It's also reassurance. So reminding ourselves there's hope. Routine. There is such goodness in having a routine. Being mindful about our diet, our exercise, and our sleep. Those things, I mean, those are the things that keep us well, that builds resilience. And then regulate, I guess that's the last one, and that's learning to say no. That's learning our boundaries, and that helps us become resilient. I mean, those are kind of my thoughts. What do you all think about this?
I have a few thoughts. That what you said is all really important for building resiliency. I would just add that seeing things as small steps, not taking too much on all at once. That's how I've become comfortable sharing my story. Letting a friend know about this experience, or speaking, here to this group, or what have you. Sharing little bits helps build that resiliency, and not feeling as overwhelmed with the pressure of all of it. Makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other thoughts?
Sure. Heather, I thought you were headed to talk.
No, I'm having some technical difficulties, which is a reframe for myself, because the older I get, the more inclined I am to say, "Oh, I just can't do this."
Yes.
And so that's my personal. I'm really working to be much more savvy with technology. So no, I'm so sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were pressing the mute button to unmute yourself. And I just wanted to circle back to the point where you said, especially as professionals, that we're not used to sharing pieces of ourselves because we're always focused on the other person. And again, since I work cross sectors and then I work across cultures, one of the things that I've been able to do is kind of distill down what I'm seeing across cultures and sectors to say, okay, here's like this archetype of what helping professionals or protecting professionals are working through. And one of the principles that I work with them on is stepping into the spotlight of their own life. This is so tricky to do. If there's anybody, even if you're not professionally working as a caregiver, but you are a caregiver in your life to someone in your family or community, it is so tricky to step into the spotlight of our own life, to bring our voice forward, to share personally, even with the people that we love. Because I noticed, and I don't know if you've all had this happen as well, but when I'm with my friends or the person that I'm dating, it's like I'm so used to listening and I'm so used to being oriented towards them that I have to remind myself cognitively, hey, bring your voice forward, show up, say what you need. And it's this strange dynamic. So a lot of times I'm working with people in this transition of how do you not only just shut off work, but it's like, how do you kind of put that well-cultivated, trained, and educated side of yourself aside and then step out into your life as who you are, which is much less put together, much less regulated. Like, see, it's the knowing laughter, right?
Oh yeah.
Because we all live it. So that's my one point. And then the second point, the last and second point is co-regulation, because I think, you know, we have tons of knowledge. And what I tell professionals all the time is, look, you all went through at least a master's degree to get here. Like if you're sitting in the room with me, just in the sectors that I work in, and if not, then high level training that took at least a year. And it's so, I find that people feel guilty when they can't self-care. And the reason why they can't self-care is because they're often triggered and in a fight, flight, freeze response, or in that ultra professional straitjacket where they've shut down and numbed out like anything that they're feeling to be of service to the other. So what I advocate is actually the co-regulation, because coming together with each other as peers and coming together with a calm person who can sit there and say, hey, are you doing okay? I notice like you haven't taken a break all day. I see that like your breath is really short. Are you doing okay? Can we just like, because we're not going to check ourselves, because as professionals or parents or most women in the world, we're going to go, 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 go. And I think sometimes we can see in each other what we can't see in ourselves.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's true. That is,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Taryn.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. It also sparked a unique thing that we don't always pay attention to. And I think it's and I guess it's circling back a little bit, but it's the generational trauma piece sometimes too, that we don't always know to honor. So sometimes we are carrying things and we don't know why. And that's a really important piece of what makes us who we are too. And we may not fully understand that. So that's another thing to look at as we look at this bigger picture of who we are as women and the struggles our mothers had and the struggle, you know, our grandmothers had. And it is generational, whether or not we even really fully understand it. You know, my grandma was excommunicated from the Catholic Church because she divorced her first husband who was beating her. And that happened, and it's something that in my family became a pride thing, actually, you know, but not when it happened.
Yeah.
Right when it happened, it wasn't okay. And so those are the kind of things. I grew up with a mom who was a school teacher, and she was a single mom until I think I was like 9ish. And, you know, I didn't know that eating tomato soup and grilled cheese was what she could afford. It was normalized for me. But I grew up in that lower middle class, but I never knew it. Right. And those are things now. It was traumatizing for her to not be able to provide more and to go to Disney World or to, you know, like those big things. And I understand it now, but I never understood it when I was little. So those are things as women that we have to understand. And as I grow as a parent, I understand much more vibrantly than I ever understood when I was little, right? Or younger. And so
Yes.
in 40s, as I'm understanding how she lived, it's just very different. So those generational trauma things, it's important for us as women to kind of understand where our loved ones have been. So I don't think, do we have any more questions or comments? I don't think I saw anything come through.
We had a comment actually from Felicia. Thank you so much for watching. Felicia runs Luxurious Wellness. So I definitely, you know, go check her out if you can. Her work is amazing. And especially for women, it's really powerful to go and get self-care. And it's an amazing, amazing work that she's doing in healing women on a different level, but just as important. And so she was just saying that boundaries were such an important part of her life.
Yeah. Yeah. And on my vision board, there is a say yes to saying no is actually on the board because I struggle with saying no. I'm very much a yes, I want to be involved, and yes, I'll do it, and yes, this, and have to learn how to say no. Like that's a hard thing sometimes. So yeah, boundaries.
Yeah, and it's, I think the courage to say no, like it takes courage, because obviously of our conditioning, and it takes courage to be not just the person saying no, but sometimes the implications of saying no, and what that causes. And I think, to dive a little bit deeper, it's like it goes into the conditioning. And I also just want to lift up that, yes, it's intergenerational, but we also have to look at intercultural and also class. And, as we move forward with equality with women, and we're starting to unwind and heal and uncover so much of like what you shared, Anne, with your background, with your mother and your grandmother. And, we also have to make sure that we're looking out for Black women, for Latinx women, for women from all different cultures, even thinking of Russia and Ukraine, and, make sure that they're having, similar dialogues, and that we're keeping everybody moving forward as a whole, so that it doesn't just drop down to the people that are the least advantaged in our society. Because oftentimes as women, if we're working, I don't have kids, but it's common in my circles in New York that people have caregivers and for their children, and they're often not white women that are caring for the children. And so it's like getting passed down the rungs. So there's so much to talk about.
There is, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And Wendy says, and veterans, and we would never forget our veterans. They are right here, for real. They are right here.
Yes.
That is definitely a culture. And when I was saying, like, the more that I have planned this month of Tuesday Talks, we really could plan a different topic for women for every Tuesday throughout the rest of the year. And I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do. It would probably take us 20 minutes and we would fill 50, 50. But this is a great time to mention for the rest of the month some of our topics, appreciating the culture piece. So next week is May 10th, and we're going to talk about perinatal and postnatal mental health, and a special look at postpartum depression. May 17th, BIPOC women and mental health, history and moving forward. Nice. May 24th, women in dating at 20, 30, 40, and beyond. And May 31st, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, a conversation for women about parenting. So some of these hit home for me, some of these don't so much, but I'm telling you, these are the things that women are talking about. These are the things that we're coming to therapy with. These are the things we're talking to our best friends about, and these are the things that I want to have this conversation in an open format. So I'm so grateful that all of you are here to join me today. My heart is full of gratitude for all three of you for just taking a shot and opening this up and coming tonight. And yes, for Luxurious Wellness and all of our sponsors, Shop Repurpose, NAMI, there's some good people behind all of these things. And I hope that people take a minute to support them. I'm going to be down in the city. I'm up in Syracuse. I'm going to be down in the city May 19th, that weekend. And I'm excited to do a little something special with Shop Repurpose this month. To get some more love out there. So I don't know. Other closing thoughts?
I have one.
Yeah.
As you were talking, this sort of example of, my experience popped into mind. But when COVID hit, COVID was a very disruptive thing for everybody, right? And I think that, we all sort of said, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and, cared a lot about each other, and did things to help each other, and, taught students from home. Teachers really stepped up. And then the longer it went on, the more the burnout sort of happened. For me, my kids were home. which I was not used to. My husband was home. I was not used to. There was so much fear and uncertainty. And then my job became in jeopardy. And I didn't realize at the time how scary it was, how much it was affecting me emotionally to have this sort of slow march into being laid off. And that's sort of why I, reconnected with NAMI, was because I needed a community. And I shared this with, a therapist that I hadn't seen, during the pandemic. We didn't do telehealth. And so I sort of had to recap like a few months. And she said, do you even understand how traumatic what you just went through was? And I said, I guess I didn't. I didn't realize at the time, the day to day, what I was going through and how much it was impacting me. And it was really that sharing it with somebody else and having to sort of recap a couple months that it could be put into perspective for me. So yeah, I think that I hope people take away the sharing, and that there are community resources too for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's important. There is, of course, help. And I think mentioning, we have the helpline at NAMI. There's the 1-800-273-TALK that people can call 24 hours a day. There's always someone there. Mm-hmm. We want people to hear that message, male, female, anybody, joining us, however you identify, there's always someone there. And you're never alone. And it's, I think that that's just a message that we can't say enough. So if you need help understanding that more, just reach out to NAMI New York State. You can certainly reach out through Instagram, or just, go on the website and there's contact information. But we want you to know that we are definitely here to support you and your family. NAMI is an organization that wraps around the entire family. And I don't mean just biological family. I mean, whatever family you identify with, we wrap around. And we pride ourselves in that, in supporting people with what they're going through and their families. Oh, yeah.
Thanks so much for this, Anne, for organizing this and for inviting us. This was really special.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming to the table. Again, my heart's so full of gratitude for you three ladies tonight. And I'm excited with what the rest of the month brings. I think it's going to bring some awesome conversations.
Really,
I think so too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, then on that note, I wish you a great Tuesday evening.
Yeah, thank you. It was so nice to talk with you.
Yeah.
You all too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.